Yeah. All right, you guys, I'm super, super, super excited for tonight. This is something that me and Delancey, we've talked about it for a really long time. And then finally, it's like the stars just aligned and it happened. We are one person down, but it's totally okay. Life happens. We're really bummed. So if he listens, we're really sad he's not here. But we've got such a good crew tonight. Like, I am super excited. We're going to have them do introductions. They've been on with us previously. So if you've listened, you're going to know every single one of these people that's on here. And if you haven't listened, go the hell back and listen to everything. Because like seriously, every single one of these interviews has been so good. And everybody brings something different to the table. And we've learned something so much from everybody. Why are you giving me a look like that?
You said every bring at first and it confused me for a second. I was like,
Anyway,
what?
Delancey, do you want to say anything real quick with this being like that this is a pretty big episode for us?
I mean, this is a pretty big episode. And I think it's really great that we're able to bring together a bunch of different parts of the triad and parts of the adoption community and bring everyone together and have different perspectives. And plus, a year, man, a
I
year.
know. I know.
That's like a big thing for us because we started this going, I don't know, is this going to be fine? And now we're like,
I know.
it's
I
just
wish I was
great. And we just have, I mean, we have a great group here. So I'm really excited about this.
I know. I know. It's okay. But like we're super pumped. So how it's gonna
Mhm.
flow. They already kind of know how it's gonna flow because we've talked to them
Mhm.
about it. We're gonna have them introduce themselves, reintroduce themselves because they already have, and then we have questions that we are going to ask them. So, and they have not been given these questions because we wanted to put them on the spot to make it more fun. Um,
Mhm.
so
We
yeah.
refuse rehearsal. We don't allow rehearsal. We don't allow it.
If you
Period.
listen to us, it's not rehearsal ever. It's
Mm-mm,
just fly
never.
by the seat of our pants. So yeah, this is gonna be really, really good. So Lancy, anything else, or else I'm just gonna call on Taylor. Oh, she like did her
Nah, go
background
ahead
all
and get it started,
focusy.
man.
All right, Taylor, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Taylor, and I was adopted when I was a baby from Korea. I was adopted into a Caucasian family, and I have two older brothers who are biological to my parents. Um, I have never met my biological family or sought out meeting anyone in my birth family. And I have been speaking and advocating for adoption since I was in high school. And that really started with people asking and requesting me to speak in front of their groups, whether it was a faith-based organization or classes on college campuses to talk about adoption and what that looks like and how that translates. So I'm really excited to be here in this space with all of you tonight and hear your perspectives and talk about adoption and just be in the presence of all your awesomeness. So thank you for inviting me and happy 1 year for the podcast show to you all.
Thanks, Taylor. All right. Oh crap. Greg, you're up.
I'm Greg Sanderson, and Melanie and I went to high school together, so pretty cool tie there. Um, I was adopted when I was like just 4 days old, and um, flash forward 30 plus years, and I actually met my birth mom, got in contact with her, and we've got a really cool connection since doing that. And yeah, I have my half sisters that I'm really close with as well, going to one of their weddings this summer, which is pretty awesome and meet a lot more family and get to know everybody a little bit more. So pretty cool. Personal life, I do art, and I did a thesis on nature versus nurture with uh, like things that came through art, through my biology, which was pretty crazy to learn about, as well as just being interested in it without any knowledge to do that. So, anyways, a little bit about me. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here. All right, Corey, you're up.
Hello, hello. Hopefully everybody can hear me well. My AirPods are charging, and then Heather's had really low volume, so we're getting there. My name's Corey Blumel. I'm a behavioral therapist at the 4th Street Clinic. I primarily, I guess, work with the poor, imprisoned, and impoverished, which obviously, oddly enough, there's a lot of adopted people or people that were in foster care at one point in time. I was in foster care, I think from the ages like 11 up, and was later on adopted. I think my adoption took a while to get finalized, but I'd imagine, if I remember correctly, maybe 12 or 13. I don't really quite remember. I haven't looked at the paperwork in quite a while. I'm one of 18 siblings, and quite a few of us are adopted and then blended mixed family. And then I know Milena. Milena's good friends of my wife, Heather. So
Yes. All righty. Hey, Raquel, you're up.
Hi, I'm Raquel McLeod. I am a child of kinship care. I was raised by my grandparents. I am a birth mother in reunion with my almost 20-year-old daughter. And I'm an adoptive mom through kinship care to my biological half sister. And about 2 years ago, I started advocating online. And in the last year, I've written and published 3 children's books, and I try to create resources to help educate and encourage hope and healing within the adoption and kinship care community.
Awesome. Thanks, Kay. Ben and Shelby, you guys are up.
All right. What's up, y'all? I'm Ben. This is my wife, Shelby Jones. We are from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and we are actively in the adoption process, pursuing children from Central America. And I must say that, Corey, your beard is fantastic.
did I mention how much I really like Ben and Shelby? I have a little sister named Shelby, and Ben has a wonderful beard and a head of hair, which I do not have. That's why
Yeah, congrats on a year of doing this, guys. This is pretty cool. We have a pretty good community here in Hattiesburg as far as adoption goes. Just the people that we know, and our own personal community is very supportive and encouraging. It's very common for us, but it's really cool for us as a couple to see you guys from not down here have the same goal of caring for folks impacted by trauma, whether it be the kids, the families, the kin, all of that. So this is pretty cool for us because it's the same missions, goals, and values and pursuits. You guys just don't live around here, so it's kind of cool for us.
No, Delancey wants to, for her birthday, have everybody that's been on her podcast fly out.
I
When she
really
turns
do.
40.
I really do. So
Let's go to
yeah.
Mississippi.
Oh, that's easy. We're in.
Yeah.
You guys are there.
Check. Now we just gotta figure out how to get the rest of y'all down here. You have a whole year to plan it, so don't get to work on that.
All right. Okay. Delancey, anything you want to add on before we start with the questions?
No, man, let's just jump on it.
Okay. Do you want to just go like same order that we just had them introduce themselves?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go same
Okay.
order, and like we can like just start with a question and then same order with their answers, I guess. Right?
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right,
Glad we agree.
Taylor. Taylor, you're up first. Okay.
Okay.
And the rest of you guys, I guess you do get to sit and stew on it and think about it because she first up. All right, Taylor, how do you feel about adoption?
I'm very passionate about adoption. Obviously, my aspect within the triad is being an adoptee. And so I can't speak on behalf of birth moms and I can't speak on behalf of adoptive parents. But my experience with adoption has just been so wonderful. And it really gave me a family that has always accepted me and loved me unconditionally. And so that's why I'm so passionate about speaking about adoption and advocating on behalf of adoption, because I believe that every family that wants to grow through adoption should be able to. And I know there are a multitude of barriers, whether it be financial, system-based, things like that, that unfortunately can get in the way of adoptive perspective adopters and adoptive families. So really just try to reinforce the positivity around adoption. I didn't realize there was a lot of negativity around adoption until probably I'm in my 30s, and I didn't realize there was so much negativity surrounding adoption until I would want to say like the last 2 years of my life. So it's still kind of newer to me when I hear or read negative comments surrounding adoption or controversies within adoption. So I'm still learning myself as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Taylor. All right, Greg, you're up. Same question. How do you feel about adoption?
I consider myself very fortunate to have the story that I do. I know it's not always like that with situations for adoption, but I've been very grateful for everything that I've been given through adoption. I've had a very fulfilling life and had some just amazing opportunities. all along the way because of, having two loving parents that, adopted parents that gave me everything that they could, and they're still like helping me all the time and supporting me and encouraging me, which is really cool. And one of my favorite things is that they were very supportive in me finding and getting to know my birth mom. That was a really cool experience for me. It was having them all kind of be cool with it, seeing me as like not just, our son or her son, but just like, yeah, this is cool, adding more family, more people to the mix. So it's been a really cool experience. I love adoption. My sister is also adopted, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, we're able to both, as we're getting into our 30s now. Well, she's getting into her 30s. I've been here for a while, but so having her and I with these different perspectives to be able to talk where we are now with adoption and just different things we notice as we get older. Yeah. And so to answer your question, I love adoption. Right?
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Corey, you are up. How do you feel about adoption?
Obviously, I guess maybe it's not obvious. I'm a supporter of it. I think for many different angles, it's benefited my life tremendously. It's completely changed the trajectory of my own life. I've been able to see, do, and experience things that I don't think I would have otherwise. I've been able to get out of an environment that I was born into that I probably wouldn't have had a whole lot of access to better living, education, safer environments. And like Greg, like I still have contact with my biological family. So not only do I have this massive adoptive family, but I have a very large extended, biological family. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. And then obviously from the other side of this perspective, I think it's kind of changed as well about, for example, about adopting. I don't think I've always kind of been open to it, but now as my wife and I are starting our family and I see other people like my younger sister going through her infertility journey and then broaching the topic of adoption, I think now I understand a little bit more about maybe like the struggles and the issues against it. Whereas before, I think I was just completely open to it. Yeah, okay, bring it on, the more the merrier. So I'm still very supportive of it. I think compared to the alternative, whether it's youth aging out in the system or remaining in terrible environments, I think it's a wonderful thing. But I obviously I think it's a massive sacrifice and change on a several different levels.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thanks, Corey. All right, Raquel, how do you feel about adoption?
I think grief and gratitude sum it up a lot for me, because I've experienced it from different perspectives. I can't just have one answer. As a child of kinship care, I'm really grateful that my grandparents gave me better opportunities, but I was still also exposed to the chaotic lifestyle of my biological father. And so I see that there needs to be a lot of help within the kinship care community to help create healthier boundaries to help protect the kids in care. As a birth mom, it is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. My daughter is actually flying in this weekend to visit, and we talk every day. She FaceTimes me, we call. We have this really beautiful relationship that I never imagined that we would get to have, and I still grieve that loss every day of my life. It is, I really don't know. I don't know how to put it into words. It's hard, and I think it always will be. And then as an adoptive mom through kinship care to my biological half sister, I'm really grateful that we were able to step in and give her a safe home and just try to improve upon what I lived through and build this incredible bond. Like she's my daughter in every sense of the word, and I love her tremendously. but I also am aware and I see some of the hardships that she faces, the nature versus nurture, like Greg was talking about earlier. I'd love to read your thesis on that. It's something that comes up a lot because within kinship care, as opposed to other kinds of adoption, I see the nurture and the nature. I know a lot of her mannerisms and stuff, and I can see where it comes from family, and I can see where we've tried to do things differently and set healthier examples. And it's mind blowing to me. You can't always nurture out nature. And so I don't know. I think it really is a lot of grief and gratitude. It's not just one thing for me.
No, I love that. I love that. And I love how honest and open you are about things. That's why I'm excited, because it's not all rainbows and sunshine, which is what we want people to know too. So thank you, Raquel. All right, Ben and Shelby, you guys are up.
Yeah, so I got to be honest, Raquel, there's no better answer than that. The how to embody like the emotions felt when thinking about adoption. There's grief, always grief for the trauma that's involved in whatever capacity. If there's an orphan, there's trauma for a plethora of reasons. And then there's also gratitude and restoration. And so to say, so that's the best answer. But what I will say from our perspective, restoration is big. Reconciliation is big from our perspective, and whether it be a child to a home, or children to their parents, or whatever the case may be, adoption is a true virtue. It's a selfless act for the intended good of someone else. And so you will never, while there are definitely times of grief, there's no chance I could ever say anything bad about adoption. So we're happy to be in our little journey that we got going on here, as wild as it kind of has been. But we're thankful to be here. We recognize that our situation is not like everyone else's, and no situations will ever be the same. But we're happy to share burdens and celebrations with all that are willing to listen. So that's how adoption makes us feel.
Perfect. Shelby, do you want to add anything?
No, I think y'all know, Ben is the talker of our family. He's much better at answering.
So when I muted my mic earlier, I asked her if she wanted to do this or me, and she was like, "You got it." I'm like, "All right."
Okay. No, perfect. All right, Delancey, you're up with the next question.
All right. So my question is going to be from your perspective and where you stand and where you are in the adoption community. What do you feel is the hardest thing about adoption? Taylor, we're going to start with you.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So for me as an adoptee, and I was a closed adoption, so I don't have any relationship with my birth family. And again, I didn't realize there was any kind of controversy or negativity surrounding adoption until probably a year, 2 years ago. And so as someone who doesn't identify with having experienced a trauma or a loss or anything like that, it's really hard for me to identify one area within that answer to answer your question. So I mean, and I know we just said, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for adoption, but for me, it really has been the gift I've been given of my family, and the life I've been given, and the privileges that I've had associated with the upbringing that I have had, and the unconditional love that I've had from my family, my extended family. And so it's hard for me to identify. And so I think someone else would probably have a better answer within this awesome group of people. I don't think I don't think this is my strongest answer of the night, so I apologize.
No, don't apologize. We
No
love the
apologies.
honesty. We love the
Okay.
honesty and everything. That's why we say we wanted everybody's answer from their perspective and from where they stand, because everyone's journey is different. Everyone's perspective is different. And I mean, I know Melanie and I feel it's really important for everyone to have a voice. Everyone deserves a seat at the table to be able to share
Yeah.
their experience. So, I mean, no, never apologize for your answers ever.
Yeah.
No, ma'am. All right. Greg, what do you think is the hardest thing about adoption?
For me as an adoptee, I think the hardest part has been actually in my adult years. My younger years, I was fine. Comments were said, but they kind of bounced off me and didn't really think much of it because I had awesome parents that I didn't really mind being adopted. And I knew from the very beginning too. My mom told me it as a bedtime story the day that they adopted me, which was really cool. So I knew from the very beginning. And yeah, I think in the adult years, I think it's hard to um I'd say like just register everything that's happened and kind of realizing as an adult how hard of a decision it was for my birth mom to have to do what she did um in placing me, and learning that side of the story too um doesn't solve all the problems, doesn't put it all into like the last piece of the puzzle. There's still plenty of pieces that are missing and that I'm discovering all the time. So I think the hardest thing is the more you find out, it's not like it gets any easier or that it's like just a cakewalk. Yeah, it can be a bit heavy at times.
I feel that. I can definitely agree with that. Corey, what do you think is the hardest thing about adoption?
Man, all right. Well, just a disclaimer. Like I said, I mentioned it before. I cry very easily, and I was already worried about like the last question was kind of a layup. And I was like, I swear, if I cry on how do I feel about adoption, I'm gonna quit the podcast. But I promise I'm mostly emotionally stable. I feel like from my own perspective as someone who has been adopted, I don't know about any of the other stuff. I don't know what it's like to adopt or to give up a child for adoption, so I can't speak on that. But as someone that was adopted as a child that wanted to be adopted, I think like finding a sense of belonging, validation. Oh, see, it's already happened. So like my family, you can tell I have a weird last name. My family is Swedish. They're all blonde haired, blue eyed, and it's large, right? And so like I have this name that's like not my own. I have a different social security number. I have a different family, and you have to like find a way to integrate into this family, right? I have my younger sister, who Shelby is the oldest biological. So she went from being the oldest to now she's like in the middle, and my older brother Ed. So you kind of have to like you're changing the family dynamic, and it's really hard and difficult to get a sense of who and what you are if you don't have a solid foundation of where you've come from, right? I feel like I was adopted into a very well-to-do family, and they grew up that way, so they have like this, I don't know if it's like attitude or confidence or birthright, something about, what I mean, like they grew up having everything. I'm kind of like tagged onto it and leached onto it. And I think even my siblings, the biological siblings, right? They felt we used to look at them as the biological children. They're the real kids. Like they get special privileges and treats, and they looked at us as so all of the adopted kids are much older in my family. And I remember my sister like because we used to always think that they were like special, and then at the same time they looked at us like, well, dad chose y'all, right? Like we came along. So it was cool to hear the other side of that, like that they felt that they weren't enough, that like our parents wanted more, that they didn't like solidify that. So I think trying to establish those bonds and your sense of belonging, presence, and your place in the family as like a child, right? Like I am your kid, and then there's this whole new identity that comes with it, right? I never lived in like a house before, or like like experience like money or wealth. So it's it was a change. I didn't cry though. It sounded like it. I got real shaky, but I held it together. Slam dunk.
You did. I thought you did great. I thought you held it way better, like held it together way better than I do. Melanie can attest to that. When I started crying, I'm like, it's awful.
Yeah. Forgot a bunch of words, but we'll get there.
No, you did great.
Thank you.
Raquel, from your perspective, what do you think is the hardest thing about adoption?
I feel like I'm going to sound like a broken record, but being a birth mom, it has impacted me. So I was 14 when I got pregnant and 15 when I placed my daughter for adoption. And no one warned me about anything. They told me that this is what I needed to do. This was my only choice if I wanted to have a place to stay, and that it was best for her. And I just needed to bow out and let her live her life. And I wasn't ever supposed to talk about it. I wasn't supposed to care. I was supposed to just get over it and move on. And I'm sure it didn't help that the home that I lived in was abusive. But even I guess it was presented to me in a way like, this is the best thing that you can do. Now you just forget about it and live your life. And you can't forget about it. Don't want to forget about it. And no one was walking me through how it would affect more than just me. And so my husband and I, when we got married and had our first daughter, and of course, at this point, we had not reunified with my birth daughter, but we told our kids about their sister, and it still causes my daughters grieve as much as I do, and having to feel responsible for that. And I mean, I have very vivid memories of holding my kid when she was 5, 6, 7, and she's shaking, she's sobbing so much that she misses her sister. Why can't she see her sister? Why can't her sister live with us? And me trying to comfort her and try to explain in a child appropriate way why she can't, and her just being absolutely devastated. And I mean, still to this day, my oldest that I placed is 19, almost 20. And then my oldest biological is 13, almost 14. And then our youngest that we adopted through kinship care is 10, almost 11. And it's watching them navigate, because there's also 600 miles between us. So it's not, we don't live in the same town, because I moved out of where the area that she lived in because I was told I would never be able to know her. And so I guess, and then even sharing, like I've built this social platform on Instagram to advocate and educate, and the only time I ever get ripped apart is on videos about being a birth mom. I'm still villainized to this day when I try to educate, and told what a horrible person I am, and that I don't deserve to have the kids I do have because I didn't keep the first one. And I mean, just a plethora of things that get said to me about the type of person I must be to have placed a child for adoption. And I think I've healed a lot over the years, but it's a really heavy burden. It's a heavy grief that it lingers. So it didn't bother me much that I don't know my biological mother. That part of adoption hasn't really been hard for me. And I guess I don't really want to get into the complexities of how hard it was to adopt my biological half sister and the family drama that comes along with that. But even as hard as that was, I don't think any of it compares to just my experience as being a birth mom.
I'm always caught off guard whenever birth moms get vilified. That always throws me off. They never say anything about birth dads. It's always the birth moms. So Raquel, that I think you're fantastic. I know Melina does too.
Yeah, I do too. Mad respect. If you guys like want to find her on social media, she's super open, honest, and real.
Mm.
And the comments that people post, like it's disgusting that there's people in this world that just think it's okay to like go up to a stranger and tell her to shut her legs. It's like, no, you shut your legs. But I just I can't. But seriously, Raquel's got like the biggest heart, and she's probably the one here. Like, I mean, Corey's been through a lot too, but like the two of you, yes, I'm pointing at you. It probably doesn't look right. But really, that's why I love what they bring to the table, because it's totally different perspective than like I feel a lot like Taylor, where I am very blessed with everything I grew up in. And then I feel like Greg, where it's been harder as I've become an adult because you're aware. But like for the most part, I can be very grateful for adoption. Okay, I gotta stop talking. Delancey, Ben and Shelby, they're next.
No, you're absolutely right. And we are going to move on to Ben and Shelby because I want to hear their perspective as they're going through this adoption journey and trying to navigate it and everything. What do y'all feel is the hardest part about adoption from where you are within the adoption community?
Yeah. So before that, Raquel, I mean, makes me incredibly sad. Hearing the stuff that you go through. It's not, we don't share that sentiment, obviously. And if we could do anything, we certainly would. We empathize with you there. But as far as our, what's been most difficult or challenging for us. So we're pursuing children. So that is our experience within adoption here. And so the most difficult part for us so far is probably the uncertainty. The fact that everything is out of your control. And sure, you fill out your paperwork like you're told to, you do all the stuff that you're told to do. But at the end of the day, like you don't really it's not a vending machine. Like that, there's no kind of, adoption isn't some transactional thing. Like it's the openness of, we're opening our home to children, and they're going to come be our children, and they're going to get our name, they're going to get our inherit, like they will be our kids, like they will be our family, and they will have every right as if they were our blood. And so the difficulty for us is certainly, it's just been the uncertainty, and it's all sorts of ways. I'll say one thing, the uncertain, like we've had job transitions that we did not plan on throughout our process. We've been going for 4 years now. We've had unplanned job transitions. You could use your imagination. What those would be. COVID. So there's just been a lot that truly was outside of our control, and there's a sense of acceptance to where you just have to know, like, at the end of the day, like, yeah, we really don't, we're just open and available, and willing. And, from our perspective, whoever the Lord would have for us, we're ready, and available and willing to tackle it together. We don't have a clue what it'll look like. We don't have a clue what the next 10 years of our life will look like, but, we're willing to do it together, and we're willing to do it with them. And if it's hard, yeah, sure, it's going to be hard. But we'll give it a go, we'll do it together. And so I think that's probably the most difficult aspect, is the fact that you can't plan. Like you don't, so little is inside of your control. And you really have to let go of a lot of your own desires and really sort of lay it down and be willing to, face the situation together.
And also, like during our last job transition that was just a year ago this weekend, whenever that happened, that was our second job transition since we started. And we were talking, it's like, we hope that the kids that we are to adopt are not waiting on us. That's been hard, trying to, maybe that the trauma for them needing to be adopted has not happened yet, that they have not been waiting for us to get laid off from our jobs and to have to redo all this silly paperwork and stuff like that. And so that's been more difficult in this last year. It's just the waiting part of this process.
Yeah, and one last thing, you think like there's so much that we just flat out don't know, and it's like, man, if I just knew who they were and where they were, and I would want to just whisper the message of like, hang in there, like we're coming, just hang in there, like we're on our way, mom and dad are coming. But like the fact that they don't know, like the fact that they don't know that someone's coming, like they sleep in uncertainty every night. Those are the things that sort of weigh pretty heavy.
Is anyone else about to start crying? Because that part just got me.
I could just listen to Ben all day. I already told you that, his voice.
Okay, Melina, I'm going to turn that over to you for the next question as I get myself together now between Raquel and Ben and Shelby, I swear.
Right. Hey, Taylor. Okay, obviously we're going to flip it to the other side. What is the best thing about adoption?
There are so many best things about adoption. Sorry, I had to turn my camera off for a second. Our rescue kitty doesn't know boundaries yet. So you probably saw her tail and things. So she's trying to steal the show of the podcast tonight. But the best thing for adoption or about adoption from my perspective is that it gave me a family and a life that I would not have had and been fortunate to have. So the trajectory of my life could have been very different. And I fully believe that the accomplishments and successes that I have had in my personal and professional life would not have been possible without being adopted and being given the emotional support and the socioeconomic status that I grew up in. I was able to successfully defend my dissertation and graduate with my doctorate during COVID. There were things that, things that I would never have dreamed about had I not been with the family that provided me with such love and support and gave me my two brothers, my siblings, who always treated me like I was their own blood. And I think the bullying and tears growing up always proved that to people around us, that they always thought of me as their sister and nothing else. No adoptive needed or no qualifiers needed when talking about the relationships that we've had. And even with my family, extended cousins and things like that I'm very close with, we'll often joke if there's like a family discussion going on about someone who has, cancer or something in the family and the genetics. And someone, of course, in the room will always be like, yeah, Taylor, so you should also make sure that you talk to your provider about that and get that checked out. Even though I'm not genetically related to my family, it's the lightheartedness that we have surrounding adoption, and that they've always just thought of me as family and biological. Even though I don't share genetics with my family, the love that we have has always been there. And so I think the best thing of adoption is that it not only gave me a family and a better life, but it also added to, I would say, my family's life as well, and having a dynamic of, for my brothers having a baby sister, and for my cousins having someone else, and I'm super close with my parents, so I think they would both say that I'm their best friend. So having adult best friends when you're family members, I think is truly an amazing gift. So there's so many best things about adoption that I would say from my perspective.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. All right, Greg, you're up.
What an origin story, right? I mean, it's it's something that's pretty cool. That's like not the norm. You get to just start from scratch, and you don't know anything about yourself, and you get to learn about yourself your entire life as you grow. Um, and you get two awesome parents that love you like no tomorrow. I mean, they just give you everything that they can with all of their love, with just supporting you. And yeah, like Ben and Shelby, I mean, that was my parents, you know. I was so excited for me to finally be at their home. I was the firstborn. And yeah, I was literally given like just an awesome childhood that was on purpose and was focused on giving me everything that they could. Um, that has been the best perspective from my beginnings to now, that like I'd be able to look back and see all this cool growth that has happened on my own, as well as learning and growing with learning more about my adopted parents and my biological and where I come from. And it's really cool to see, and like kind of like I said, you don't get the whole puzzle in perspective yet, but you're learning and you start to put more and more pieces together. And that's been one of the best things too, is like the nature versus nurture, back to that, where there's some things that I was like, man, do I do this because I just picked it up because somebody else does it? And then I meet my birth mom and my half sisters, and I'm like, you guys do the same thing. Like I get it now. Like that's where that comes from. So it's really fun to enjoy those aspects of it. And yeah, the best thing is that just love just so much. It's really fun and really great.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. All right, Corey, you're up, sir.
All right. Oh man. So best thing about adoption from like my perspective of me being adopted, right? Not just like adoption in general. I think I don't know, it's a couple of things, right? I think maybe one's kind of, I don't know, crass or gross to say out loud, but I think they're both important. But then the other one is, for me, is my siblings, right? Being able to have a large family. You know, I was the youngest in my biological family. The others were pretty much grown, doing their own. And there's only two. My brother was long gone, but now I have this massive family, and I'm the second oldest, right? So I have this ability or this like privilege to love and to care for and to look after, to guide, to be there, and like develop these really, supportive, rich, deep, meaningful relationships. I think having a dad, right? Like I didn't grow up with a dad, so to be able to have that, and not just me, like there's where I grew up, like nobody had dad, so it wasn't like anything. But when you learn, like I remember like learning to play catch and learning how to play sports and all these other things, and I felt like I was behind. And you start to see all these other areas that like your cohort or your group or your age group, especially as a boy or a guy, that you're supposed to kind of grow with and develop and to do. And like I didn't have those things. I got a lot of other things. I was kind of raised by women, so there's benefits and to that, but just to have that, connection, that belonging, that pack, around you, that was probably to this day the best.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Thanks, Corey. All right, Raquel, you are up.
I think safety. And I think of that for all three of my experiences as a child of kinship care. I was exposed to a lot of chaos, but I also got to avoid a lot of chaos. And I had safety at my grandparents' house, at my house. I didn't have to worry about if it was safe to go to sleep, or if I would have food, or if there would be a drug deal. Like none of that was a concern for me when I was at my grandparents' house. And then with placing my daughter for adoption, I was able to put her in a safe house. I didn't have to bring her into chaos with no support and a very bleak future, and try to figure out how to survive with her. I gave her an opportunity to have a safe and stable home. And then the same essentially for bringing in my youngest. It was an opportunity to give her safety and security. So safety.
Awesome. I love that. All right, Ben and Shelby, you guys are up.
So I think I have a couple. So I'm going to cheat. I think the first one's really obvious. Like new families is the best thing about adoption, and in whatever situation, anytime there's a family created or grown because of like redemption or reconciliation with trauma is a good thing. But I think what I'm also going to say, and this one maybe a little bit out of the ordinary, the stories that you get to tell, like the impact. So there's a lot of people that are just think about like this podcast and like the stories that we've told just tonight and how like it's been encouraging, uplifting, like enlightening. It's positive. It's drawing people together. It's not causing dissension. Like, and the ministry to others that you get to do, like when you take part in these things. Like if we refer back to the beginning, like adoption and orphans are because there's are the result of some sort of trauma, and for whatever reasons. But as that's situations are reconciled, like those stories become an encouragement to others. And so I think that's probably a little bit different. It's not nearly as personal, but I think just as an observer over like everyone as they've talked, I'm sitting here like just really encouraged. And it's like, oh, well, so is everyone else when we talk about this stuff, So I think that's probably one that we probably don't think about, is our ability to minister to others who have had a bad day or having, maybe their family is mad at one another. And it's like, look, hey, we've all been there, So I think those are probably it's probably a couple of things.
Perfect. Okay. Delancey, you are up with the next question.
Okay, so this one is a little different because Milena and I both learned about this as we were doing the podcast. So
I know I've talked to Greg about this. I have talked to Greg about this on the
Have you talked to Greg about it? Okay. I think I've only talked to Milena about this, and like of course we did a whole episode on it. So if anyone needs me to read the definition, I have it pulled up on my phone. I'm more than happy to read it. But we are looking to know, what are your thoughts on adoption fog? Taylor, up first.
I love being first. So correct me if I'm wrong, Delancey. My interpretation of adoption fog is people who are in this fog, like haze, that adoption is just like perfect, and they haven't like fully come to terms with the fact that they've experienced a trauma, or like they're in complete denial that they experienced a trauma or a loss, and they're just like, and it's like other adoptees have taken on the responsibility to like let adoptees know that they're in the fog. I had no idea what that concept was until people on Instagram unsolicitedly told me that I was in the adoption fog. So I wound up posting like a meme with the Mariah Carey, I don't know her meme, regarding adoption fog, just because I felt like that was my perfect response for when people have come at me and told me that I'm in the adoption fog, based on the reels and things the content that I'm putting out on social media. And so I feel that everyone is entitled to their opinion. And if there's a group of adoptees out there who believe that the adoption fog is real and exists, and in their perception it does exist then, right? And it is a real thing that maybe some adoptees are on a spectrum, are experiencing greater volume of it than others. I would say for me, I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that I would fall anywhere within an adoption fog spectrum. I think I'm very confident in who I am and know where my adoption story is, and I have control over my narrative and have had a very realistic upbringing in terms of always being told that I was adopted and having these conversations with my family and always having access to my birth records and having very supportive adoptive parents of letting me know that if I were to ever want to search for my birth parents that I would be able to. So I never felt that my opinions or my thoughts were ever suppressed, or that I had to hide any part of my interest in being adopted. So I don't think that I am in the adoption fog, which I'm sure everyone will come at me and be like, no, that's why you're in the adoption fog, because you don't think you are. So everyone has the right to their opinion. And I would never argue and take the time to tear down someone else's, stance on that. But for me, I think being in my 30s, I think I know where I'm at in life, and I don't know that I'm in, and I don't agree with that I would be in somewhere in the adoption fog, but I would never translate that to someone else's experience or perception. So everyone is entitled to feel how they want with the adoption fog, but I stand by my Mariah Carey meme of I don't know her. So
I'm gonna need that meme so I can send it to my boss whenever they try to tell me to do something or that I've done something wrong. It's like, I don't know her. Greg, what are your thoughts on adoption fog?
I really like what Taylor said about there being a spectrum. I think that's what everybody experiences on with different levels. I think those that probably experience it from more traumatic side definitely have a little bit more the word escapes me, but I'd just say, like frustration, to put it in those terms, where someone might be a little bit more experience more trauma versus on my level, I would say I don't really experience that much of it from a negative standpoint. I am curious though, Delancey, I want you to read the definition though. I want to hear what that.
I'm so glad you asked.
You're
I'm more than
welcome.
happy to do that for you. In the terms of adoption, being in the fog represents denial of the loss inherent to being adopted. Being in this fog is haunting too. Adoption loss is stored in our implicit memories and bodies. In a way, we are haunted by it until it lifts and we allow the loss to become visible.
Yeah, I think with those, it's more for myself, and obviously this is my view and opinion, but I think it's more of where you're coming from with these realizations of being adopted. In my own perspective, I was raised Mormon, but as an adult, no longer Mormon. There's things I look back at as to the aspects of that religion, how I was raised, and as an adult now, with looking back at that coinciding with me being adopted, would I have these other situations, the what ifs? And I think that then starts to unravel a little bit, pulling on that thread that there's other aspects, not just religious, but biological versus like what I was taught. Can this day and age, everything is, I don't know, just kind of blown out of proportion if it irks somebody too much. But like, I don't want to say that I was conditioned, but there are things that are naturally, as children, we are conditioned to do and believe, and that's not something that I can hold against my parents. They did the best they could with me, and that's all you can do. And so it's no one to blame. I'm not angry about any of that. I don't hold anything against them or anything against that religion or anything either. But it's one of those things where the older I get, there's just realizations as an adult how others had to make their decisions, especially having my birth mom's perspective, like Raquel, learning how difficult that was, not just to place me for adoption, but after the like having no contact, having no ability to know if I'm doing well. You know, there's plenty of that on all sides that I think I just had brain fog, not adoption fog. I think that adoption fog, I don't know. I guess it's from different perspectives and on the spectrum of how your adoption story went. That's what I'll stick with.
No, I think that's a great answer. Corey, what are your thoughts on adoption fog?
All right. Hopefully I can word this correctly without sounding snooty, but I think it's important to be able to distance myself from, say, my position as a clinical provider and a therapist, and then my personal experience and opinion outside of what I practice, right? Especially when we get into behavioral health and psychiatric terminology surrounding that. Adoption fog is a sexy term. It sounds good, right? It evokes an image, but denial, right? I think we're good there. And again, denial obviously is going to express itself and be shown a number of different ways. Obviously, there's circumstantial stuff. If someone asks me a question offhandedly about my adoption experience and I tell them everything was wonderful and great, it's improved my life and I've had a wonderful experience, I don't want to discount or be devoid of, yeah, it's horrible things, happen to my experience, I'm sure, but overall, but also too, I don't feel that I'm entitled to other people to give me an accurate representation of all their traumas and just to be completely emotional and vulnerable and open up to me and expose their deepest, darkest stuff, right? I think short, quick answers or offhanded comments or wherever you get it aren't always the most accurate depiction of what's going on. Is that denial, or is that just you aren't entitled to this information and I'm not going to share it with you, or it's not time? I talk pretty openly about my adoption and my own experience, but there's also a number of things, and I've spoken with Milena and Delancey about like some of them, and this isn't, there's multiple layers there, right? And I feel like sometimes terms can be crafted to meet a situation and a scenario to evoke a feeling, but I do think that the term brings up a good point, right? That there is a lot of there can be rather denial, but I think generally from my own experience, right, from my personal experience, not my clinical opinion or anything like that, from what I have seen from adoption is it is not necessarily, it's been such a massive improvement and a far cry away from the beginning situation in the scenario. But we also are aware of prison and recidivism rates and abuse that happens in foster care and adoptions. They're adopted into regular families, right? And regular families go through and experience and commit horrible acts on each other, and they get experience to it, right? And I don't want to hang the hat of those experiences on adoption in particular, right? If you get adopted into a family that goes through divorce or sex abuse or physical abuse and emotional abuse, is that adoption, or is that just family and people, right? And same thing with your own kind of experiences, expecting everybody to relay all of their experiences accurately in a few sentences is very, very, very difficult, and I don't want to hang that on denial. Do I feel like this can occur and has occurred? Absolutely. I feel like just like there's honeymoon periods and anything else, but I don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to have too much of a peek behind the curtain, right? Sometimes you got to be careful of the questions you ask and the things you hear, because you can't unhear and unsee some stuff, and I don't want that to shade my feelings and opinions towards adoption. I don't want to hear me speaking on something and they're like, well, Corey said this and this might be that. This is my own personal experience, not necessarily a clinical stance as a therapist, right? There are two things. Hopefully that doesn't sound snooty. I just try to be careful on how I don't want things to, I don't want to be quoted and misconstrued and someone's uses someone else's credentials like against me. I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry if that was a long, convoluted answer.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I appreciate you identifying like what you do and your experience and everything like that. I think that helps to clarify everything and to help us understand it a little bit more. Raquel, what are your thoughts on adoption fog?
Truthfully, I think that there's almost this mob mentality on social media, and people's lives are so intertwined with social media that we've all become very offendable, and you almost feel bullied into accepting what the masses are saying is true. And so with the adoption fog, that's one of those things that's become a trigger word within the adoption community. And I think it stems from years of the opposite. You know, adoptees and birth parents in particular were told to take a back seat, sit down and shut up. And so all the ones that have had negative experiences within their adoption stories now have a platform and the ability to say, no, this was hard and this did suck, and I was told to just be grateful. And what happens when you have enough people that are feeling the same thing, it's mob mentality. And so enough people saying it's true, then it must be true of everyone. And if someone says it's not true, then that derails the narrative that they are trying to I don't want to say push necessarily, but it's almost like the people that have had a difficult experience, and I'm one of them. Like, being a birth mother sucks. I mean, just quite frankly, it does. And I have been told to sit down and shut up, you know, so all of a sudden some people care about my perspective and they want to hear my story. And I think the threat of being told to sit down and shut up again is enough that the people that really want to push, like, this is hard, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and it does hurt, and there is trauma and there is grief, I think they feel threatened by any narrative opposite of that because they're afraid that will silence them again. So I'm not sure, and people have become really attached to labeling things. Adoption fog, I would just call that, you know, a healing journey or a grief journey, because it's not linear. Sometimes, you know, like Greg was explaining, like, he didn't really start processing stuff until his 30s, like it was easier in childhood. Like, that's not him walking out of a fog, that's him walking through his journey, him processing his grief or his, you know, his story. And I think that's true of all of us. Even if we have had a really good experience, I imagine you process it in different ways at different times when you hear different things. And, you know, like a fog, if you think of a physical fog, it's this blanket covering that you can't see in front of you. And I mean, isn't that true of everything? Like, none of us knew what this was going to look like. I didn't know what this would look like in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And so I guess if I could redefine the word fog, you know, perhaps that would feel like an accurate representation, but I think it's almost been weaponized. And so it kind of just gives me cringy feelings, honestly.
I think Melena and I agree on the cringy feelings. So I totally get that. Ben and Shelby, what are your thoughts on adoption fog?
So, as the folks that haven't quite yet experienced the adoption fully, we probably have the least weight on the topic. But I think when it comes to adoption fog and things like that, whether it be our assessment or judgment of how another person is acting or feeling towards a particular situation, I think I would hope that we would all be able to acknowledge the evil or the difficulty or the challenges and call them out and be okay with that. Just like I also think we should acknowledge the wins, the victories, and the celebrations and call those out. And I don't see a huge need to blanket pass on things because it's not as simple. I understand that you can relate to things and it helps people find some community. And I do support those things because community is vital to life in general. But I think the more that we, as an adoption culture, like so us, the more that we can talk very honestly about, hey, some things really aren't that great, but some things really are great, then I think we'll begin to call a spade, to use some straightforward language. And, I think anybody that's trying to leverage a viewpoint to win an argument, that I probably don't have a lot of time for that. I'm more interested in doing what's right for those around me and for adoptive children and parents and those actually trying to help. And so that's sort of where we are there. It's obviously real and it's challenging, and I'm not trying to take away from anybody that feels that way. But I do think that you can talk about the bad and you can talk about the good, and you can find good and bad in the same exact situation, the same exact home, the same exact adoption. And that's okay. Like, doesn't have to be weird or you don't have to avoid it. It's just, some days it's really good. Some days it's really bad. Here we go.
I think some people call that family.
Yeah. How about that?
Some days it's really good. Some days it's really bad. It's just,
that's right. How about that?
Isn't that crazy? It's family.
Yeah.
All right, Milena, you can go ahead with the next question.
Do you want me to go over that one? Because I feel like that one, they kind of spread it out into, does that make sense? Like they kind of, like with Raquel's answer, I feel like she kind of spread out into that. So do we want to ask that one? I mean, I can share what it was, but I feel like each of them kind of went into it.
I feel like they kind of did too. I feel like they did.
It.
Like, I was like, what do you mean? Literally for the first lot, what do you mean? Did you see my head about to tilt like, huh? Like a puppy? And then I looked down and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So what our question was, but we won't have you guys answer it because you guys kind of did it in general anyway, each of you talking about it. We just wanted to know thoughts on the anti-adoption industry. And I think Raquel went over it like perfectly about how like there's just this thing that people just want to run with. And so people just want to push it so hard. And so if something threatens them, then they like more walls are put up and it's pushed even harder to go that way. But you guys addressed it, and like every single one of you did, to where like, don't blanket it, even though they feel like maybe sometimes they need to blanket it. But like, honestly, everybody's story's hard, whether you're adopted or not. Like, and that's what Corey touched on too. Like, you get into these families who try to like function as normal families, and then shit can hit the fan and something can happen to them. And it's just, it's just like any other family, adopted or not. And that's kind of where me and Delancey focus on, is like, we get a little frustrated with like, just because you're adopted doesn't mean your life is so much harder than other people.
Yeah.
Because I know plenty of families, friends, people who are in their biological families, and it's really hard for them, extremely hard for them to see their parents or siblings or something go through things. Doesn't matter if you're adopted or not. But so I feel like you guys kind of knocked that out of the park with that one. So do you want me to do the thing? Yes, Raquel, of course.
Yeah. I think the anti-adoption movement should really be the pro-reunification movement, because instead of anti-adoption, why don't we focus on supporting families in a way that they can reunify? Because that's the main goal. Before adoption, it should be pro-reunification. Keep families together when at all safe and possible, and then rely on adoption as a safe alternative, not anti-adoption. There'll always be a need for adoption, even with incredible support systems in place. For instance, my biological father was supported emotionally and monetarily, and he died an addict. Like, he had the support of his family, and he could not break the cycle of addiction. There's no amount of money you could have thrown at him that would have helped that and helped him be a responsible father. So there will always be a need for adoption, but instead of automatically writing people off for saying adoption is evil, just focus on pre-reunification or pro-reunification, and then after that, focus on building healthy adoptive families.
I love it.
That's
No,
my
and
two
this is
cents.
this is
That's
why
the
I
best
love
way
you,
to put
Raquel,
that. Yeah.
because she's somebody you guys don't really know her backstory. Me and Delance do, because we've had the privilege of interviewing her and just following her on
Delancey
social
took out
media.
a bag of popcorn to listen
I
to my
did.
story.
I straight
I will
did. I
never forget
straight up
that.
did. Because it was so good. I needed snacks. It was so good. Like, I had to have snacks with it because I was so engaged, because your story is one that's just, you literally encompass every single part of the adoption community. Like, you encompass all of it, and you still have, you would have every, out of any adoptee or anyone in the adoption community I've ever met, you would have the reason to be mad at the world. And you still have a joy within your heart. And I just find that so intriguing and so impressive and so 100% God. Like, and that's, but, and I love that you completely, you are like-minded with most of us, all of us, that we do get that from him. We know our story. We know we have a bigger thing than what the hand we were dealt in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, Ben nailed it perfectly when he said the chance to minister to others and to share our stories to help others. That's the reason why when Taylor, at the first question, she was like, I don't really have a good answer. Like, sorry. And it's like, no, you have a seat at this table too.
Yes.
Everybody has a seat at the table, because everyone's story will help someone somewhere. So I just, can you please put that on Instagram about the pro unification, because, and TikTok, because there's some people who need that information.
Well, and Raquel's got a good following, but that's like you really should go check Raquel. Like Delancey said, she has every right to be somebody who's like pissed off at the world, but she's done so much work on herself and finding a relationship with God. I don't even know, like, are you a certain religion, Raquel, or are you just like in with God? Like,
I love God.
Okay, but you know what I mean? Like, no, and it's fine.
people...
And I don't think that matters, because for me personally, in the end, it's between you and God. Doesn't matter what freaking religion you are, it's between you and God. That's just how I feel. And yes, I am Mormon Latter-day Saint, but I'm not the strongest one, if any of you know me very well.
I grew up in the South, so I grew up Baptist, but I don't claim a denomination.
But I love it, because you are somebody who, it's like Delancey said, has every right to be angry at the world and hate everything, but you have found inner peace. And my favorite thing about you is that you show every day that you still struggle. Like, because she is one that struggles, but she shows it, but she knows. Yeah. Anyway, she's just amazing. Okay. This isn't like I could go on about Raquel forever. Delancey, do you want me to just go over the very last thing, or do you want to do that?
I mean, you can go ahead and do it. I'm good with that.
Okay, so we'll kind of end this out. You guys have been with us before when we've done this, and the very kind of last thing we ask is just any advice you would give anybody in the adoption community. So it can be from your part of it, or just kind of maybe something that you've learned from tonight. But we just want advice that you would give to our listeners just about anything adoption. I mean, you guys have already shared so much goodness with us again, even though you guys have already been on here before, but just advice. And so I think it's you, Taylor. Your bubble dropped. Your bubble moved, but I think you're first
so that
up.
happened to you too.
Okay. All of a sudden, Taylor was
off.
down.
I thought that was me. All of a sudden, Taylor went down there, and everyone moved around. Okay.
Yeah, it's totally my fault. I think I got kicked off, and then I got it rejoined, but there was a little bit of a delay. So sorry, I wasn't trying to peace out early or anything like that. I promise. But I'm back. Right.
Hey.
I would never leave you guys.
Okay, we'll start with you. Go ahead, though.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks. So I think for advice, I would say that for perspective, parents, who tends to be my target audience when I do speaking engagements and things like that, I would say to definitely do your due diligence in researching all angles of adoption and things like that. But I would also say that eventually you'll reach a point where it's like an opinion on anything, right? Everyone's going to have an opinion, and everyone's going to have a horror story that they heard about from their neighbors, nieces, husbands, second grade teacher, right? And so don't let those stories scare you, because there's a lot of those stories out there, right? So even as an adoptee, people will tell me when I say, my husband and I want to adopt a child one day, and things, people who are not adopted will tell me to be weary of adoption and how adoption is messy and things like that. And I'll ask them, like, I'll say, oh, I didn't know you were connected to the adoption triad. What angle are you coming from, or what perspective do you share? Not to, kind of not make their opinion important, but I just want to know where they're coming from, which stakeholder group they're representing. And of course they aren't. And then I'll ask, how many children have you adopted, or what issues have you had with the children that you've adopted? And they'll say, well, we didn't adopt. Or we'll hear like, you'll never love an adopted child the way you would love your biological children. I'm like, oh, well, tell me about your family dynamic with the biological children and the adopted children in your household. And they'll say, oh, well, we don't have any, or something. So while it's important for prospective adopters to do their due diligence and their research, I think it does reach a point where it's just people's unsolicited opinions, and you just have to follow your heart and pursue adoption in a way that makes sense to you, that's feasible to you, to your family members, to the people that matter. And at the end of the day, your opinion is the only one that should matter. So
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Can I follow up on one thing that she said in there?
Of course. You don't have to
Anytime
ask.
I have to say this because I said it once in another podcast, but I love it when I hear people say that you'll never love an adopted child as much as you love a biological child. I find that a very interesting thing, because I'm the family's favorite. So, I don't know what they're talking about when they say that. Like, I'm the favorite in the family. And I know my sisters are listening. I hate to break it to you. I'm mama's favorite. You're welcome. Continue. Sorry.
All right, Craig, on that note, you're up.
I would say be open. Be smart about being open and how you're open, but be open to just all possibilities. And that goes for all sides of it. I don't think my birth mom ever thought that she would ever see me or meet me again. I don't think my birth parents thought that they would ever be able to have children in their lifetime until a certain point when they adopted me. I think that there comes an openness to everything that if you're open to it, that things will happen, opportunities and possibilities happen, and be able to adapt. I think that that's a big thing too. I listen to Ben and Shelby talk about all the things that they're going through with the job transitions and anything else that hurdles that they're going over. That was something as an adult that I didn't realize, or I guess I didn't realize until an adult, that my parents had to go through that many hoops, had to jump through all these things that they had to do in order to finally get me. And I finally was adopted by them. They had to adjust to a lot of things, adjust to having a child that was unpredictable at times, and as all kids go, but they were able to adapt, and we were all able to adapt to each other. So I'd say be open, be adaptable, and that'd be my biggest advice.
Perfect. No, I love that so much. All right, Corey, what advice would you give?
Oh man, this is going to be a lot. I don't want to hop up on a soapbox and give a diatribe, but I encourage people to think critically and increase their ability to think critically and to weigh out and to do quality research, right? I don't want to reopen a topic that we just talked about, but I think like the adoption talk, right? Terminology like that starts to disseminate into the rest of the world. And that's why it's dangerous, right? When people with certain titles after their name use certain language. And if you do a little bit of digging into something like that, right? And everybody I'm sure has heard, like, they talk about like Romanian adoptions being suspended back in the day because they weren't holding the babies, and it was creating these increased chances of sociopathy and psychopathy, right? And then you see, for example, like books like this, right? Adopted killers and 430 adoptees who killed and how they did it, right? Someone took the time to write this horse shit and then they sell it. Sorry if I can't say that word. But for example, the adoption fog is just a spinoff of like adopted child syndrome, right? These are people that have researched and tried to do and think critically, but then it disseminates into the world and they're using it for death penalty cases, or they're using instances like Ted Bundy and Eileen Warhols and dozens and dozens of serial killers who are adopted, right? And they're trying to draw and make these connections. And I've even been guilty of even telling people, hey, be wary or be, of adoption, right? Because from my own experience, but also at the same time, other than beyond these like initial criminals and everything, what they all have in common is like they were all children at some point in time. They were all birthed by somebody, right? It's not, they can be false correlations and connections made. And so when you are going around soliciting, or even unsolicited in Raquel's case, she's heard so many horrible things thrown at her by people who are hiding behind usernames like buttchug42 and bears lover 99, and they aren't held responsible and accountable for what they're saying. And it's really easy to get on Reddit and some of these other places and say things that you aren't held accountable, right? By, if I say something and do something in a clinical setting, I can be sued and held accountable to it, right? Someone can question me and call me out on it. Taylor defended her dissertation. She literally had to stand up in a room of her peers and professionals and be open to have her expertise, information, and research criticized to her face, not to tear her down, but to improve the quality of the information. So if you're genuinely interested in adoption, increase your ability to think critically, learn, reach out, experience. This podcast, right? This is a fantastic example of that. Talk to people who have been there and experienced it. There are plenty of people who have had children that ended up in prison and on drugs or down in destitute situations that they were their own biological children, right? There are these not increased chances. And also too, you're taking children that are from extreme circumstances and doing your best to mend, mold, and better. And it's difficult to judge that trajectory change because you don't get to see what it could have been before, right? I have zero doubt that, if I wouldn't have been adopted, I would be, dead or in prison today, right? I don't think there's a lot of choice about that. Have I made mistakes, things that I regret and I'm ashamed of? Sure, but I don't want to chalk it up to adoption. I don't want to lean on scary clinical terms. And that was I haven't heard a whole lot about like the anti-adoption thing, but when I started connecting and hearing, I was like, wow, hearing it from a different perspective, right? It is very, I think I've even, like I said, I admit it. I've told people, because from my own experience, I've had my adopted brothers are hellions, you know what I mean? But is it because they were adopted, or is it because they're very much a byproduct of their surroundings, and could they've ended up better off, right? So I encourage everybody to, whether they're adopting, giving up for adoption, or they're adopted themselves, to really look at language and how it's used and how it's thrown around, and why and what these people have to gain to say these certain things, right? I can't imagine, these people out there tearing down Raquel, right, for sharing her experience and her story and being open and vulnerable. It's really easy to throw a rock at that person when there's zero accountability and mirror being held up. And also at the same time too, people get into positions of I don't know, research. I'm sure you all know you can run down a rabbit hole with that shit. So I got my 2 words out. I'm done.
No, you're good. Don't ever apologize for swearing, Corey. Hello.
Yeah,
Do you know
I
me?
was gonna
I'm the
say-
only one that swears on the podcast, but like,
Hey, now, I have said the occasional swear word on the podcast. I have apologized before I did it, but I have said it. Did anyone else just learn that Ted Bundy was adopted? I just learned that. I don't know if y'all saw my reaction to when he said that, but I had to Google it because I just learned it. Okay.
Yeah, no, and Corey, like, I love your words of wisdom always. Seriously, me and Heather talk about things all the time. She's like, I'm gonna get Corey's perspective on this because you're just awesome. We just love you. All right, Raquel, you're up.
So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no, it's just, you're good. I know there's been a lot. Just any advice that you would give to whatever part, the whole adoption community, whatever part that your heart feels called to give advice on.
Okay. One thing that I advocate for a lot is open and honest communication, and open and honest communication over emotionally charged opinions. And that's something that I experienced that really affected my journey. So, for an example, and I'm able to look back with empathy, and I know that it was done with good intentions, but my grandma was notorious for saying, "Your mama didn't want you, but we did," or "Your mama didn't love you, but we did." And I think in her mind, I see your face still, Nancy. But
I'm sorry, I can't help it. My face does
It's
subtitles.
okay. It's okay. I'm in my 30s and she still says this to me. She introduced me to her doctor. When I took her to the doctor, I was in my early 30s. And she said, "This is my granddaughter, but we raised her because her mama didn't want her, but we did." And I'm just like, let's drop that. Okay. So I think in her mind, she was trying to affirm that I was wanted, that they wanted me. They never made me feel like a burden. They never made me feel like I had stolen their golden years, their retirement. Like they wanted me to know that I was wanted, but they could have affirmed that without trying to tear down the fact that my biological mother was incapable of stepping up and being the parent that I needed her to be. And so that when I say, share, be open and honest, not emotionally charged, in your responses. So an honest response would, your mom is not able to raise you. That's honest, that's true, but it became more of an emotional, like, she didn't want you. And so I think that's really super important, the language that we use when we discuss birth family. And so with that in mind, after I placed my daughter for adoption, I knew that she would grow up to hate me, because I knew that she would grow up to hear that I didn't want her. But it was the opposite. And I had this really beautiful moment. Actually, a few years back, I went to a coffee shop with her mama, and was really just saying, thank you, because 20 years ago when we made adoption plans, nobody talked about open adoption. They reached out to me when she was 9 years old to facilitate our reunion, and I was like, how? And I was also asking her for advice for us to try to cultivate a relationship with our youngest daughter's birth mother. And I said, thank you. I don't know how, like, what advice do you have? And she said, I'm going to try not to cry this time. They had given them a hospital room in the same hospital that I delivered her in, a few doors down. And I'd asked to have my daughter brought to my room. I wanted to be able to hold her and spend some time with her. I was told not to, that I shouldn't, that I needed, it was going to make me get attached. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm already like, that's not gonna, increase that. It's all, those feelings are already there. So I was very, and it wasn't her parents that were saying that, it was my guardians. But I was insistent, and they brought her to the room, and I got to spend time with her. And the day that I was we got to be discharged on the same day, but I walked her into their room and handed her to her mama. And in this coffee shop, her mom was telling me that it was like God had lifted a veil from her eyes. And in that moment, she knew that it was breaking my heart, that they were about to celebrate growing their family, and I was going home a shattered woman. And she said, I knew in that moment that you did love her, and that you did want her, and that I had to let her know that you cared. And so she grew up hearing that I did love her, and I had to make a decision that was better for her. And so because of that, at 9 years old, she started asking, you know, can I meet her? Can I meet her? Can I meet her? Instead of her growing up with this narrative, well, your mama didn't want you, but we did. And so it's just, that has been imperative for me moving forward with our youngest, the language that I use to talk to her about her story and her birth. And it's difficult in my situation. I have all these memories with the birth father that we share. You know, I have a history with him that she never had, and I've still made it very intentional to be honest with her, but also to be loving in how I word the information. Your mom and your dad, they loved you so much, and they loved you so much that they wanted you to be in a safe home because they couldn't provide that. It's nothing that you did. They just weren't capable of being a safe space for you. So we got to be that safe space. And so words are so important. And I know I probably don't get it all right, but I'm hoping that when our kiddo's older, she'll know that she was deeply loved, and that she was put in a position that she didn't deserve to be put into, but we took steps to try to give her the best life possible.
Sorry, I'm slow to the unmute. No, I love that. Thank you, Raquel, so much. And I always love hearing anything you have to say, like seriously. And I think it's so good to hear that perspective from a birth mom. That's why we wanted to try and get all different parts, because I mean, it's kind of more heavier set on the adoptee side, but yeah. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's that's what I love about you. You're super vulnerable. All right, Ben and Shelby, you guys are up.
So as is typically the theme, we're not nearly as deep as the rest of this crew. I think our advice is probably a little bit more practical. We do have different answers. And so I would say, if there's one thing just to say, don't do it alone. For anybody that's listening, or anybody in our community or interested in our community, don't be alone. Find others, find people you can share with, find people that you can talk to, find people that you can have coffee with. We weren't meant to live in isolation. We weren't meant to go through difficult things by ourselves. And so as a practical approach, just find people. So don't do it alone would be my advice. Or my one last thing is, don't be alone.
And
I love.
And mine would be.
No, you're good.
Oh, sorry. For us adopting, we don't have any biological children, and we did not want biological children. Is that to remind myself that I don't owe anyone an explanation as to why this is what we were called to do. I don't have to, tell you exactly why we're adopting or why we're choosing a sibling group, or international versus domestic, or the fact that we didn't want children at all biologically. And so to remind myself that I don't have to provide that answer to you, that our reason is our reason, and the Lord has orchestrated that in each of us, and even before we got married, for a purpose. And so, and that's good enough of a reason why we are here pursuing children. So
yeah, I'm much more of an open book than Shelby is.
Clearly,
if that hasn't been made known yet. But it's, Corey, that's a lot of what you were saying earlier, which was we don't have the relational equity. Not everyone has the relational equity for you to just spill your guts on everything. And so there's some things you just won't know. And it's not our place to know everything, though. We don't have to solve every problem. Just the ones that are ours. I don't have to solve, your problem or someone else's problem, just my own. And through community, and through intentional, through just bonding, sharing, caring, like we'll get there, and I don't ever want to miscommunicate that things are easy, and I never want to miscommunicate that there's some sort of rosy situation. It all comes with challenges, and just because they look different doesn't mean they're harder or easier than others. What may be really tough for us may be really easy for someone else, and what may be really easy for us may be really tough for someone else. And it's not our place to be the judge of those situations. Just be there, support, find community, draw strength from the community, and hang in there. Just keep going. If one day sucks, wake up again, go again tomorrow. So we appreciate you guys a ton.
No, thank you. But like I said, I know it's weird, but I could listen to him talk all day. Like, you should form your own church and I'll join it. And then I'm just kidding. Anyway, no, but seriously,
I don't think so.
thank you, Delancey. What else do you have to say? We close this out. I know Taylor had to bounce. She had something going on, but anything else? Anything you want to share?
I don't know. I think I'm just going to reiterate, really, everyone I felt like came to the same advice in their own way, in their own perspective. It's a lot of be open, be honest, be willing to accept the information, but be ready to accept the information and to find that support so you can accept the information. I just really appreciated that everyone's perspective just really brought a similar answer. And I agree with the community and the openness and the honesty. You may not always like the answer, but if you're going to ask the question, be prepared for the answer.
Yeah.
But be prepared, you may not like it.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I know you and I, Melena, we can both attest that we haven't exactly shared everything about our journey, but it goes back to what Shelby said. We don't owe you all the answers until we're ready to share them, or if we are ever ready to share them. So
correct. Yeah.
I'm so thankful we had this group together. This was such a great idea, Melena. You're so smart. And I'm your little cheerleader. I'm going to go along with it and be like, yes, I love this idea. We should totally do this. But I mean, y'all are amazing. Everyone that's been on here tonight, it's amazing.
No, and we appreciate it. And this is exactly what it is community. As I'm sitting here thinking, we can actually do this. That's what I was telling my husband. I'm like, there's no way in hell you would have caught me over a year ago being like, let's get this group of people to talk about adoption. But it's because we've been consistent and we network and we find people, and then people are awesome enough to come join us. It's just amazing. I mean, I know with Raquel and Taylor, who's gone, they're people who we have found through social media. Everybody else we know personally, but it's just, I don't know. It's been one of the greatest blessings.
The cool ways that we found each other personally. Me personally talking about Ben and Shelby, I met them separately.
Yeah.
I did not even know they were married. I met Ben at a young professionals event, and I met Shelby when I was there for a meeting, and just got to talking to both of them about different things. Ben more about Cheetos and Shelby more about adoption, but it was what it was, and it worked out.
And now they've combined to be one thing. It's like a Ben and Jerry. It's a Ben and yeah, I like that.
It's interesting how we have found people on the internet, but we've met people through our lives too. And it's all, it's the community. And I think Melena said it best, where if you're not in the adoption community, maybe you don't get it. If you don't understand, and you can be at any point of the triad.
Right.
But when you're in it, you're just excited to be in it together, and you immediately want to start talking about it and get perspectives and stories. So okay.
Yeah, that's so true. No. And it's Taylor's not even here, but it's what she said. People that come and clap about nothing they know about. Well, tell me about how you fit into the adoption. Well, I don't. This is just my opinion. And it goes back to what Ben said. It's none of your damn business. Stay out of it. I don't, I can share what I want to share and those kinds of things. So
anyway, it's if you want to know, we'll tell you, we'll share our experiences. But when you double down on being not nice, it's just
Well, and yeah, and then sharing the experience doesn't like open the floor up for commentary or criticism, right? I think a lot of people are using what other people say to rather than to hear it, understand it, and to feel it. They're looking for a crack or a way to weaponize it or to turn it around.
Yes.
Everybody tonight shared some incredible moments, you know. I get all teary, like Greg talking about his parents, you know, sharing his adoption story with him. Like that's beautiful. Or Ben talking about wanting to tell this kid that, hey, I'm coming. It's beautiful. All right, I'm not trying to, but yeah, that was the thing that, like, when I went back home, like that was the thing that I wish I could have went back and like told my young self, like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Like, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna get through. Like, this is all just gonna be past. And then, you know, hearing, you know, Raquel share her story, right, and coming from that similar thing, and to be able to know like how special that is, right? How much you have to love someone. I don't even know what it's like, right? Because we're in the process of turning hackers, how much you must love to give your most precious thing up to a better life, right? That is the biggest sacrifice you could ever make, right? It's like biblical in a way, right? There's stories that are similar to the same thing. It's really touching. And then for someone else to just lob shit at it, it's gross, you know.
Corey,
that's honestly the best way you could have put that, is like lobbing it at it, because it's almost like they're trying to take away because of their own insecurities with their own lives and with themselves. It's I don't know, stuff like that bugs me too. I don't like it. It's not nice.
No. Well, I'm gonna end it on that note, because Corey, you just like sent that out really, really good. No, you really did.
It fell apart at the end, though. I was trying to hold it together.
I love it. I love it. No, it's awesome how emotional you are. Like, and
I love that. I love that about you. I love how like you're willing to be that vulnerable. And you know, even if you almost made me cry myself, it's fine. It's fine. Like,
stories are what connect people.
Yes.
You know, whenever you hear someone defending a belief that they don't even have experience with, or you hear someone encouraging you to hold on and you'll get through it, and they never experienced hardship, like that's not what encourages us. We're encouraged by people that have walked what we're walking through. We're encouraged by people that get it and understand. And storytelling is a way that humanity has connected for eons. And so when you get people together that have very vulnerable things to share about an experience that, you know, they've walked through, that's what encourages empathy. That's what encourages change, positive change. It's not the name calling and the yelling and the hot-headed opinions. It's sitting together and listening and storytelling together. And it's powerful.
Yeah. No, we love it. That's why we asked you guys too, though, because we knew everybody would have different perspectives, and we knew everybody on this would respect and listen and not jump and try and bite and snap. You know what I mean? Like,
and
that's why we did it.
And not just like listen to respond, but listen to understand and take in the information. I think society, you know, has taken it upon themselves that, like Corey was pointing out, like they're looking for cracks, they're looking for problems, and not just like with adoption, like with anything.
Yeah.
People are just so quick that they want to just like jump and jump and jump. And it's like, if you listen to what they're saying, you'll hear the actual message and you can actually have a dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, it crazy, I know, but like, you know, you can actually have a conversation with people nowadays. But that's, you know, storytelling, community, honesty, openness, all of that. I just can't get over how great tonight went. I'm just so amazed by all of you. All of you are just amazing human beings.
Yeah, no, and no, and Kate, well, you better mail one of those out to everybody that's on this damn call then, Corey, if you're making your own little thing. No, but you guys, thank you. Like, seriously, thank you. I am forever grateful that I've been able to meet, like, I mean, I've known Greg the longest, but like I've known everybody and gotten to know everybody through Delancey too. It's the best. It'd be better if we all were close and then we could like meet up and go for coffee and like be in person with each other. You know how much better that would be?
My 40th birthday.
I know,
Hello,
right?
everyone's going to come to Mississippi. Ben Shelby and I decided. Everyone's coming to Mississippi to where we are. It's the
So
South.
true.
It's more like respectfully, it's more fun down here. Just saying.
Hey, I'm in the
I don't think I
South.
could point Mississippi out on a map, to be honest. And I'm from Texas.
It was worth me unmuting just to laugh at that. That was
No.
good.
I love it. I
What
love it.
what states is everybody in?
Mississippi. And Miss Ben
Uh,
and Shelby are in Mississippi too.
We're all in Utah.
yeah.
Oh,
Raquel-
really?
Yeah.
Raquel, where are you?
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Girl,
Oh, okay, okay.
Are you north of us or north of Alabama?
Well, shoot. Geography is not my strong suit.
I don't know. She might be north of us with the way she just said, well, shoot.
Are you closer to Memphis or Nashville?
Okay, hang on.
We're in Pigeon Forge right now.
I'm gonna cut you off and I'm gonna stop this. Not that our
You can
listeners
stop.
aren't gonna love us
Sorry,
like talking
yeah.
about
Oh, yeah,
personal.
yeah.
Sorry,
But I'm
Greg,
gonna
good call.
stop this and then
Sorry,
you guys, we
listeners,
can
you don't get
continue.
that kind of info.
So no, it's true. You can go follow people to find that kind of shit out. Anyway, okay. Thanks guys for being here. We love each and every one of you. We're so grateful for you guys. Thank you for doing this for us for our 1 year. We so appreciate it. Taking a big chunk out of your night to do this with us. Like, I've just got to stop or I'm going to start crying. But seriously, thank you. I know Delancey says thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna
Congratulations on your 1 year.
Thank you. We're going to
Thank
stop
you.
this and then we can keep chatting. Okay. Peace
Yes.
out.